Hey, it's Rebecca, and you are listening to Resilient by Design. I'm pretty excited because today I am interviewing my design friend and colleague, Michelle Binette. Michelle Binette has her own podcast, which I was a guest on, oh my goodness, what feels like light years ago. And I think she's a really great guest because she has decided to stay strong and firm in the type of projects that she will take on and how she onboards her clients. She shares in this episode how she's recently overhauled her entire onboarding sales process. And I think it's a really great takeaway, especially for designers that feel like the way that they've been doing things isn't the right fit for them. My big takeaway from this episode is truly that you need a process, but you can have a process that is unique to you. You do not have to use someone else's way of doing things to run your business. So I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. Here we go. All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business. Are you as tired as I am working in a bubble? I mean, shoot. It's time to maybe socially distance with other people. That is why I love coming to the Collective Workspace. If you are someone who is looking for a little bit of stimulation, a lot of beauty, the Collective Workspace is a really great place to go. It is a co-working space for designers, architects, and builders in Toronto, and they're opening a second location this spring. They have flex workspace and offices starting at $120 a month. There's boardrooms, a podcast booth, which is where I am right now, concierge, storage, and a trade-only design library. You can find out more, or if you want to book a tour, go to thecollectiveto.com. All right, I'm now recording with Michelle Binette. I'm so excited to have you on my podcast because you graciously had me on your podcast a long time ago, it feels like now. Pre-pandemic, possibly, I want to say.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And
we did a live event.
Yes, you had me to your live event. Oh my God, back when we could do live events.
I know. What a time to be alive that was.
Oh, I missed that.
I know.
All right. Well, for those who don't know who you are, can you just give us a little, I don't know, give us the down low. Who are you?
I am Michelle Binette, as you already said. I'm an interior decorator based in Toronto. I launched my business, it's really confusing. I want to say it was 4 years, like this past April that I think, something like that. And yeah, I mean, I used to be in marketing. I went to school for graphic design, so I'm self-taught. And I really have, it's been a roller coaster. It's been a real roller coaster. So
and you have a podcast?
I do have a podcast, Real Talk Design, which is funny because I'm trying to remember how we met.
Oh, yeah.
How did this even happen? Did I just reach out to you randomly, which is quite possible?
You definitely came to one of my designer meetups. Remember?
I feel it was before that, though. It was before.
But had I already done the podcast with you?
No. Wait, no, I don't think. Yes.
I met him so at the meetup for the first time. It was wasn't it the first one I ever did? It was in a pub.
Yeah.
It was in a pub back when we could go to pubs.
Oh, God.
Amazing. Yeah.
When would that have been?
Hours. Oh, God. It was fall, I think. It was because it's been over a year since I've had my first meetup. So yeah, must have been September, October, maybe. Maybe it was sooner than maybe it was summer. I have no idea, Michelle. Time is blurry.
I don't know what day.
It doesn't. Yeah. No one else cares about us.
Yeah, whatever.
Who cares where you met?
Yeah. We met, it happened, and now we're here.
And here we are.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I wanted to have you on the podcast. I'm sorry, did I cut you off? Did you want to share more?
No.
I'm sure you'll share more as we go. I wanted to have you here because, well, I wanted to return the favor because you had me on your podcast, but also I love watching your business and seeing what you're doing. Like, you are such a hustler. You have done so much in what I think is a very short time frame. And I know for a lot of designers out there and decorators and stagers who are just starting out, they look to someone like you admirably, like, wow, like you've got this great Instagram, you've got a podcast and your own design decorating business. What I want to talk today about is your business. And I know that you've made some real leaps and bounds in only the last year or so in how you run your business, what you do. And I love too that because you and I are also in a mastermind group together.
Yeah.
And I
love that. I love that group.
Great. It's like information sharing. Everyone's there to support each other. But I also love that you are very quick to say, hey, I got this lead. It doesn't fit with the type of job I want to do. Is anybody interested in this type of job? And I think it's really great to talk about this because a lot of business owners are afraid to turn down work, even if it isn't the type of work that really fills them up.
So, it's scary. Yeah. It's hard to do. So yeah, I don't know what happened. There was, I started to consider doing like renovations. Like, I started my business doing mostly decorating. I think she wants me to keep talking. I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure.
But I don't want to miss what you're saying. Go on.
I started my business, like when I first launched, I only did decorating. And I remember at the time being so nervous that I wouldn't get anybody contacting me. I remember people asking like, well, do you have to turn away a lot of renovation projects? And I never did. I literally never got people asking me for renovation projects. I just was very clear on my website what I did. And then we did our own reno, and then I got a project for a new build in Picton. So I went from like nothing to like a new build 2 hours away, which obviously added a whole layer. The distance added a real big layer. And I loved the project. We're going to photograph it. The clients were incredible. I loved them. But I just it was so stressful for me. Like, it was just really, really intense. And it was like 2 years, which, is really long. And so then it was, COVID hits. And I remember I was hanging out with Dave, my partner in the music nook, we call it. And I just had this aha. I'd been working with like a business coach back like in May. And so, lots of reflecting, maybe smoked a little bit of weed. You can cut that out if you need to.
Oh, that's okay. Everyone does their process.
And so
we are in Canada, just to be clear.
Yeah, it's legal here. Yeah.
It is clearly legal. It's not just decriminalized.
Great. Yeah. So I realized that I don't think that I can win at renovations. Like, I don't feel like could I do fine? Sure. But I just started to like think, okay, I feel like I'm really good at furnishing and decorating. And I feel like I could be really, really good at that. And I could make I could be at the top, or, not to be like, I'm not saying I'm amazing, but I feel like I could get there. And I feel like it's a strength that I have. So then I just thought, like, why wouldn't I go all in on that instead of like trying to do renovations not so well while trying to mix in and maybe, not being as excited about it. So I just kind of made a decision. I don't know when it was. It was like sometime during COVID. So probably mid-summer. And I was just like, I'm not going to do renovations anymore. I'm going all in on furnishing and decor. And that's a need people have. And when people have that need, then why not go to somebody who can say, like, this is what I specialize in, right? So then what started to happen, though, was, as I'm sure you've experienced, as soon as you kind of allow yourself to be open to certain things, they start to happen. So when I had
I'm listening. I just have to eat a little bit of food because I haven't eaten.
Totally. What are you eating?
I'm eating a quesadilla. Sorry, guys.
Oh, yum. Is it Uber Eats? Yeah, you said. Yeah. I love it. That looks amazing.
Cali Mexican Grill, not sponsored. Okay, I want to keep talking. This is so good.
Yeah, great. You eat or I'll talk.
Okay.
And I have to be honest, it's so weird to be on this side of things. I did a podcast not that long ago too with someone else, and I was just like, oh shit, like I have to like say something that's like worthwhile so that people actually feel like that was worth listening to, as opposed to just relying on other people. But anyway, so yeah, so I decided to go all in. But then at that point, I was getting more renovation like emails and like inquiries. And some of them were like, oh man, that seems like would be amazing. Like that sounds like a great project, actually. But I was just like, you know what? No, like you said, like you're going all in on this thing. And I was just like, I'm gonna forward it to other people. Like I'm staying true. Like I'm not gonna worry that this is the last lead I'm gonna get and I have to take it because it's money. It's not what I want to do. It's not my skill set. There's too much of a learning curve that I don't want to deal with. So pass it along. And to be honest, like it's felt really good to be able to pass them along. And, whether they turn into something for some of you or not, I don't know. But it feels good to be able to kind of like, with confidence, say like, this is a project for me or not for me. And sometimes it's even just a conversation where in theory, it's a furnishing and renovation project, but for some reason, it just, they've said something that doesn't align for me. Like, people who say like, I want it to happen fast. Like, it doesn't seem that difficult, or I just really need furniture. And I love how they staged the house. And I just want it like that. Like don't hire me for that. So I pass it along and I give the information. And if it was like a huge red flag where it's like, this person's an asshole, I wouldn't pass that along.
Yeah,
obviously.
just to let everyone know, if Michelle sends you a lead, she's not going to send you the worst lead ever.
No, like I'm sending leads that I'm like, you can deduce whether they're good for you, but it's not a fit for me kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, like it feels like very liberating and it feels kind of powerful to be able to be like, no, I don't have to say yes to this. I know now what feels right and what doesn't. And to be honest, a couple of those, a designer friend that's in the group did take them. And she was kind of like, be glad you didn't, because it's kind of not great. And so I feel like for her, she's probably going to start being a little bit more like picky, because it's not for me to determine like whether something's a true red flag for everyone. But anyways, that's been really, really awesome though.
I love that you are doing, like, you are so, I don't think you see it in yourself, but you are really ahead of the curve when it comes to timelines in your business. Like, so many designers are in this industry I know designers in my courses who've been doing this for 20 years and they're still unable to say no. Mm-hmm. So, that ability to say that 2-letter word,
yeah,
recognize and trust your instinct is very powerful, because as soon as you can filter out those projects that are not, and it's taken me a long time, like I'm literally just starting now to do that.
Yeah.
It is scary though. It's easier. It's like, looks nice on paper. It's easy to say, but it's very different to actually do.
Well, thank you for saying that, by the way. That like makes me feel good. It doesn't feel like what you're saying all the time, but like one of the leads, this one I'm especially proud of, like how I handled it. It was really hard to do this. This was a catalyst for changing the way that I like work with leads at the beginning. But at some point in time, it was during COVID when, it was like, we were past that initial, like kind of lockdown. Lockdown's a pretty loosey-goosey word, I would say. But, something weird just happened.
Yeah, I just fixed the sound.
Okay. And so I did a consultation. The guy sounded great. And I went into their home, like we were masked and whatever, not the point. But anyways, and it was like, they kind of like had a lot of their furniture, and it was a big project, and it was like they needed, straggler furniture here and there. They wanted like art, they wanted accessories. And in theory, this is like, would be what I thought I wanted, right? But then I started to go through, I was like, okay, their aesthetic is not totally aligned with mine. It was a bit like farmhouse, like shabby, like big clocks, you know what I'm talking about? Like those big, like farmhouse clocks, stuff like that. And it was a paid consultation. So, and I was giving them like tips. This is what I used to do, which like the biggest thing for me is having learned that there's not one way to do things, and we all have to figure out what is right for us. And what I realized, like the consultation as the kickoff to a project, and I'll explain why, didn't work for me. So I go in, I do the 2-hour consultation, $500, and then, I make a list of the scope, and it's quite large, but it's not like full rooms. None of them are full rooms. So then I go home, and I pull together the numbers, and then all of a sudden I'm like, frig, man, like this is like 20 hours, 20, I think it was like, I can't remember what the numbers were, but it was like the budget was really high, which I was like making up stories in my head, which is a problem I have. But I was like, oh, they're not going to expect this. And I was like, for me to do all these things, it's still going to take time. And I think it was like $15,000 or something design fees I had kind of established. So I was like, they're not going to want to pay that. And I was like, I don't even want to do this. Like, this is a massive project that's going to take up my time to do straggler shit in every room. Like, I don't want to do this.
Like, it didn't appeal to you. It's like, regardless of the money, regardless of the size, there was something in you that was like, this doesn't feel,
it doesn't
You're not excited.
No.
You want to be excited.
It's so big. It's one thing to do something you're not excited about that you're like, okay, it could be in and out, done. But this was like so much stuff. And there would be nothing for like, wouldn't feel good at the end, like not a single room would be a full room of mine. Right.
So I'm super curious. How did you handle it? Because I know a lot of designers struggle, and I have too in the past with, they've paid you. And I've had friends who've gone through this where the client's like, I paid you for the consultation. Yeah. Assuming you would be our designer. And now you're telling me it's not the right fit. And then we as people pleasers are like, oh, I guess I can do it. So what did you do? So it's funny because I was like, nothing about it felt good. Especially when he said lazy boy for a sofa. I was like, oh, God. I'm like, can I convince him not to do a lazy boy sofa? Do I want to? So nothing felt good. And I remember saying to Dave, my partner, I was like, Dave, I think I have to like go back and tell this guy, like, I don't think it's a good fit. And he was kind of like, oh, I don't feel good about that, Michelle. Like, we just got out of COVID. We had a really like slow month. Like, he was not vibing on my, like, I'm going to say no to this project. And so I was like, everything in me is saying no, like, no. So I ended up emailing him and I said, I'm really sorry, but I was looking at the project and looking at my current workload. Like, I don't think that this is like, I can't remember exactly what I said, but it's not a good fit. I wouldn't be able to start for a few months and I feel bad. I said, and this was the thing too, was like, I don't like the idea of taking $500 because if I think of myself as the consumer, whether they got value or not, like I wanted to invest $500 in somebody who was kicking off a project, not $500 too. Now I got to go find someone else and maybe do the same thing again. So that didn't feel good for me and it wouldn't feel good as a consumer of that experience. So what I said was, I know we talked about a lot of things and I made a list of all the things, the suggestions I had given him, like Lucy, nothing like elaborate. I talked about this and this and this. And I said, if you don't feel like you got value for the consultation, I'm happy to refund you. And so I put the ball in his court and he asked for a refund and I gladly gave him a refund because that set me free. But that's when I really started to think about like, I don't like that. I don't like that feeling. And I don't like that personally, that experience for a client. And then I've been working with a business coach, and she talked about like the way that she kind of approaches, leads and things like that. So I don't even approach it like that at all anymore because I'm like, it's not going to be the last time. I'm not going to know whether I want to work with you until maybe I'm in your home and seeing your space. And then I have to like say, thanks anyways, this isn't going to work. Like, and now I have to refund $500 or keep it. And, that just didn't feel good for me. So now the way that I approach it is I do a discovery call, which is 15 to 30 minutes. And then from there, I'm trying to identify whether or not they are a good candidate for full service, AKA, the style, like their personality, which I'm just trying to gauge, timeline's realistic, their budget's realistic. And if it wasn't a COVID situation, which I did early on, I would do an in-home meet and greet, which is complimentary, but it's me taking them through my sales pitch. And it starts with them taking me through their home. But I've worked with like the business coach who's like, I've been able to identify I have a differentiating factor. So I can say like, this is kind of my philosophy.
And then I have like what I call now is the art method, which is, a whole process that's like my process that I explain from like exactly every single thing. And it's about an hour and a half. And since I've like tweaked it early on, I did a few of them in person, but I still had some room for improvement. One of which I'm pretty sure the guy was a really weird situation. I won't even get into. He offered me orange juice, to which I was like, what's in that orange juice?
That's an interesting thing to offer. Water is more typical.
Yeah. So I was like, what did you put in the orange juice? And he's like, anyways, it was a weird, that was weird.
Like he was trying to roofie you.
Yes, that's what I'm convinced. It was very weird. I'll have to tell you this hilarious, weird story another time. But anyways, and now because of COVID, I'm just doing virtual meet and greets, and it is an hour and a half, but I've closed the last 4 of 4, and and I changed to flat fee. So now all I have to do is I meet with them. I get to see their space, because if we're Zooming, what they do is they do FaceTime, and we'll mute the Zoom so that they can flip the phone, show me their space. And then, so that's just like 10, 15 minutes. And then I get into like, okay, now we're going to dig deeper on, like, what is it that you want? It's really trying to understand like what their pain points are. And then I'm like, do you mind if I tell you how I work? And then I go into like a very elaborate explanation of my philosophy, my process, like the entire phase. And then at the very end, we talk a little bit about budget. And then I, on the spot, tell them what my fees are. And pretty much like, the last 4 I've closed. One didn't close on the spot. We wanted to iron out some like timing stuff. So I ended up emailing her and say, okay, this is what the timing could look like. And it's just completely changed the way I approach, like now I just feel like it's easier, even though it's more time. I feel like if I can do that sales pitch, I'm probably more likely to close them or gauge whether like they're into it. And it's like, if they're not into some of those steps, or, I can figure out like, well, it doesn't sound like we're a good fit. It hasn't happened yet, obviously, but yeah, so now I don't have to. And then if it's somebody who just is on a budget, then I do a 2-hour consultation, and that's all it is. And we could do more later if it made sense. But yeah, so that's kind of like, for me, it's eliminated the fact that I have to worry about doing a consultation for somebody I don't like and don't want the project for. And then I feel weird about the money. And that works for some people, and that's great. It just doesn't work for me. And then also like the flat fees that I finally came around to, even though it was like hard for me to do that. Now I can just say the price on the, like a call like this, as opposed to I'd do the consultation, and then it would take me like 2 hours to put together a proposal. And it would take at least 3 days for me to work up the mental capacity to want to sit down and even do that. Mm-hmm. And then I would send it, and then it would be like crickets. And then I'd have to follow up.
So, okay, there's a lot of information here to unpack. I think this is really great, because what I keep saying to all my students in our Power of Process course that we're doing right now is, I agree with you, Michelle. I think everyone's process can be unique to them. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a one size fits all. I attempted the one size fits all for a long time. And then I started to see just like you, what was working and what wasn't working, and like what would jive with me.
Yeah.
So what I think it's interesting. And I want to ask you a few questions. So the discovery call that you do is, I think I do those as well. It's extremely powerful. But I'm curious as to, do you not feel that you can weed them out in the discovery call before the consultation? Like, I find the discovery call very telling, to stop from getting to so I do charge for my consultation. I would have it no other way, because to me, that's an hour and a half of your time as a professional that's not getting paid. So the discovery call to me is my opportunity to really find out personality, like all the things that you say, right? Like personality, budget, style, realistic expectations, timelines. I also tell them our fee structure. I give them I plant a seed, I like to call it, in the discovery call, so that they already understand how we work, so that when I show up, it's not like, oh, what? Your fees are going to be this? Because I've had that. I've had that in the past, like you say. And I've only had it once though, in all my years doing this, where someone after the consultation was like, oh, I just paid for a consultation and I can't afford your services.
Yeah.
And so now I'm really careful in that discovery call to make it very clear so that there's no surprises. So I'm curious, how many times do you do the discovery call and yet still find in the consultation it's not the right fit?
So it happened a lot before, because now I don't really do the consultations, but I will say this, like, it could be a matter of the quality of leads that come my way. I sometimes are not the highest budget. So like, I think a big thing for me too is like, this is what I'm doing now. Like, could it change when I start to see a different caliber of lead coming through each time?
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing I've realized, this is a big thing that I've realized, and it's proven a couple of times for me. When I just say a number, people don't understand what that is. And so like, I'll use my neighbors as an example. My neighbors are a client, which is weird because normally I would assume I would be like freaked out by that idea. But I've gotten somewhat good at listening to my gut. Like, I don't work with friends or family. I'm not really that friendly with my neighbors. Like we're not that we're not friendly, but we don't like hang out like some people do.
Yeah. I do. My neighbors are my best friends, so I get it.
I love it. We don't do that. And I'm like, that's too close for comfort. But it was weird. They reached out to me after they found out what I did and they checked out my website. And I remember Dave and I going, oh man, like, I don't know if like they're going to want to spend what it's probably going to cost. And what was interesting is I find that what I have found is if I had just quoted numbers, which is what I don't like, I'd rather, if you're not sure, what it's going to cost. Now, I do know a lot of the times when someone leads with price, that's generally a red flag. It's not going to say 100%, but when the first thing you ask me in an email is how much do you cost? Typically, and I'm actually starting to track it, because typically that means when I tell you my price.
Typically, if someone leads with price, they don't see the value.
Yeah.
If they're a value-driven if there's someone who's looking for value, they typically, my best clients have never once asked what it's going to cost. Now, I do try to pull out of them what their budget is, so I know what types of finishes I'm picking.
Yeah.
Right? Because I also don't want to go above or go too below or what not.
Yeah.
But you are so right. That is like, as soon as somebody asks about price, they are going to be fixated on that throughout the entire process.
And what's interesting about that too is I was talking to someone on my podcast and I forget his name right now, but he said something that was just like such an aha for me. He said, everybody has determined what is valuable to them. And if somebody comes to you with price, they have determined price is what is the most important thing. And that's totally fine. But when somebody approaches me with price as the number one thing, it's not to say I'm the most expensive, but I'm surely not the cheapest. I'm not the person for you. Like, so whereas some people value really quality, design, and, ideally would it be like cheaper? Sure. But I'm going to say like, it wasn't the cheapest, but I'm so happy with the end result. So it's like trying to figure out what it is that somebody values and whether or not that aligns for you. And for me, I've just realized it doesn't align for me, for somebody wanting something super cheap.
It's like shopping for a pair of jeans. When we could go into retail stores, once upon a time, it's that, do you go into the store and say, okay, where are your jeans at this price?
Yeah.
Or do you go in and say, I want jeans that make my butt look really good?
Yeah.
And trust the salesperson and you try them all on. And then once you found the pair, you're like, let's see what this costs. And at that point, you're like, well, obviously I'm going to pay whatever it is because nothing else looked this good on my body.
My butts never looked better and I can put a price on that.
Because you value that. But the person who doesn't value that, who just needs jeans, because everyone's wearing jeans and it's a trendy thing, and so I got to get myself a pair of jeans, they're going to go and be like, where are the jeans for $50?
Yeah.
They'll get jeans and they'll have jeans. But then they don't look great.
Exactly. And I think it's super. But the thing is too, is some people can't tell the difference between what looks great and what doesn't.
No, I know. Most people can't, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's so important for us to realize, like, not every client that comes our way needs to be our client. And if they've decided that price is the number one thing, then that's the thing. But what I was saying too about my neighbor was, like, I sat down, I had a sales pitch started. It hadn't been like totally fleshed out like it is now, but I took them through it. And because I took them through it and I showed them what the price was, like, what I realized specifically with them is, sometimes if I had just said those numbers to them, they probably would have been like, oh, but I was able to show them. So for me, I don't always get the most high-end clients yet, higher end clients yet. But what I know is that sometimes people value it enough where they'll find the money to do what it is, because they even though they're not super wealthy, they will figure out how to make it work because they do put enough value on what we do. So if I have the opportunity to do the sales pitch with them and really, really show them before I start spouting out numbers to them, then I can actually, like, take them through. And I've been thinking about actually doing the meet and greets virtually going forward, because, if I can, like, as opposed to
less of a time commitment. If you're not charging, then
exactly.
And I
it's
think
been totally fine.
Just decorating is different than a renovation. I struggle with doing virtual consultations. When lockdown hit, we had a client was like, "Oh, we can just do it virtually," and I was like, "You know what? I've tried this. It doesn't work. I have to walk through the volume of your space. I have to look at the doorways. I have to see things."
Yeah.
I can't help you. I can't come up with any concept of what it's going to cost if I'm not physically in your space. But with decorating, I found it is much, much more straightforward for sure. I like that you do that sale. I like that you call it a sales pitch.
I don't call it to that. I call it a meet and greet.
No, I mean, internally, you have like a set presentation that you do, which is educating them on your value. And I think a lot of us as designers skip that step. We assume that they've come to us, they've probably seen our spaces, they know our value, and then we're surprised and shocked that they don't hire us, or we're surprised and shocked that they don't have the fee or the money to pay our fee. And I think that for any designer that's listening to this right now, this is a great takeaway, like to make sure you have something, whether it's verbal, whether it's visual. I have what I call a consultation pitch deck, which is a PowerPoint that I bring on my iPad, which is a visual to accompany what I'm telling them. I find it helps break up all the eyes on me, but that has been supremely helpful for me. Also for me just to sell my worth. Yeah. Because sometimes I won't say the thing I need to say, but because on paper in front of me or on the screen in front of me, I will say the things. I'll talk about our core values. I'll talk about the sustainability initiatives that my company is going through. And I otherwise probably wouldn't bring it up.
Yep.
To be honest. And if I relied on myself to wing it all the time, I wouldn't have half the business that I have.
Totally. And I want to circle back to what you were saying about, like, getting paid for your time. So I want to kind of reiterate a little bit of, for me right now, like, if I was at a place where there were so many leads coming in and I needed to, you need another layer of how to try to weed people out, like to funnel a little harder, then I would probably change that. And I think it's just depends on where you are at your business and what makes sense. Like, for you, not saying your time is more valuable than mine, but like you're kind of at a place where that this works for you. Whereas like right now where I'm at, this has worked really well for me. And I'm actually excited. It's like, I want to, and I don't really love, like, I'm not giving any ideas for also, like, it's literally just, it's a meet and greet. I want to see your space. Can I get excited about your space? If we're talking and I did throw an idea out, are you responsive to that? But it's really also about like uncovering more of what matters to them. And also like whether they resonate with my process, right? So that to see if it is a good fit. But to me right now, because if I left the consultation the way I was doing it, I would still go home and spend 2 hours putting together a proposal. Mm-hmm. So right now I'm still like up as far as time.
No, you'd lose more time. I know I used to do that. Oh my God, it was agonizing. And then I would negotiate with myself.
Yes.
Be like, I don't know. I don't think they're the kind of people that And like half a day has gone by. I still haven't sent the proposal because I'm not quite ready to hit send, even though I did create it. I want to go back and I want to ask my husband what he thinks.
Yes.
And then I'm going to call Jessie, my design friend, and be like, do you think this sounds reasonable?
Yeah.
I mean,
post it in a Facebook group, get a little crowd
Oh my God.
sourcing to see if they
Yeah.
agree with a good price. They don't know anything about it, but hey, yeah.
Yeah. And then I would bring it down, and then you'd send it. And then you're holding your breath, waiting. Like, okay, when are they going to respond? Oh no, I just
Now I have to
swore my own
follow up.
podcast. But like, oh shoot. Like, oh, they definitely, it's too high. It's too high.
Yeah.
Right. And you're in your head. I did for a long time, and recently I stopped, but I did for a long time tell the price of my design fee in the consultation. So I wrote it down on a piece of paper and I said, here's what it's going to cost.
And you slid it across the table?
Yeah, sort of. Not quite so dramatic.
Look, I'm going to write a number down on a piece of paper and I'm going to pass it over to you.
You know what? I did. It was really hard to do because I don't enjoy the numbers part, but it was most of the time people were like, okay. Sometimes people signed the contract right there in front of me.
That's amazing.
Sometimes people gave me a check on the spot.
That's incredible.
But I realized as I'm trying to grow and scale my business that that's not a scalable model unless you go to the consultation knowing what you're going to charge. Because if I ever wanted to not be the person doing the consultations, like if I wanted a senior or associate designer on my team to be able to do that consultation, I can't expect that they're going to be able to come up with the number on the spot. So right now I'm in this transition of I give them an idea and then I immediately go back and we put it in a proposal, but I don't spend hours typing up the proposal. I have it all set up in Dubsado. I plug in the number, hit send, and it goes to the client. But there's a lot of power, I think, in presenting the price face to face, whether it's in a Zoom like you're doing it or in person, because you can see the reaction in real time.
Yeah.
You know, and then they can ask you questions or you can ask them questions or you can get to the bottom of how they feel. Also, if they don't flinch, like it's nice to see that, right?
Totally.
As opposed to making up a story in your head about them receiving your email. Who knows? Maybe they really struggled and they're like, okay, yep, we're going to go all in, like you said, like with your neighbors or whoever. And they're like, we're just going to make it work. Or maybe there are people who are like, yeah, honey, can you just grab your checkbook? Like it's no big deal. You can't see that when you're not physically in front of them.
Totally. And you're also presenting them numbers when they're excited, like when it's hot, they don't like now they can, tell you to your face, yeah, I do want to move forward when they're excited, not when they've gone home and now convinced themselves otherwise because it took me 3 days to send them a price. Now they're going like, oh, you know what? Like maybe they go do more research or I don't know what it is, but and like right now I'm testing my flat fees because I literally it's 1, 2, 3. It's 4. Yeah. The last 4 that I did, I finally went to flat fees, ripped the Band-Aid off. And I'm doing a square footage to which basically now when we go on to like, ideally I'm asking them for square footage before the discovery call, if they can pull that together for me, because I want to get a gauge of like, where it's at kind of thing. But now, and I did kind of an analysis of, I basically took every project that felt like a full service, like, it didn't go off the rails. It didn't randomly stop. It was like a legitimately full service. Cause I don't know, that's happened to me where it's like shit went off the rails and now it just kind of stopped and I don't know what happened. But, and I went back to check the square footage and then I converted it to like, okay, if I did, and then I checked the number of hours and then I did, okay, if I charged that based on my hourly rate and I did, $25 a square foot, is it still like, is it more than what it was with my actual hours? And with my analysis I think it was the period, however many projects I put it in, I want to say I put in like 10 projects. If I did a flat fee, I would have been in the hours that I tracked for each project, it would be $16,000 ish profit. And then I thought, okay, well, what if we don't always track every hour? I'll add 10% to what I actually tracked. And it was still profitable. So sometimes I might be over, the hours I would like to be, but as long as I'm netting out over five, a year where I'm mostly profitable, then that's a win. So now I just have to track and see if that's what ends up happening, because I've also changed my process, which I don't know exactly how that's going to impact my times.
I think that's a really powerful message, is the tracking your numbers, because most people don't do that. I didn't do it for the first 6 years I was in business. This is why I'm saying, you're like, girl, you're so far ahead. Like for 6 whole years, I had a design business. I didn't even look at the numbers. Like, I didn't even look at a project. I wasn't even looking like how much money I made. Like I didn't even know. If you said, Rebecca, how much money did you make in, I don't know, 2014? I could not tell you. I could not tell you. I can probably pull it out.
Yeah.
I'd have to like file my taxes, but I really didn't know as a business how much I was making. So I think the big takeaway for me in this conversation right now is you have to track, you have to look back at past projects. I think especially like as we move into a new year, like 2021, take the time, if you haven't already, to like do as Michelle does. Look at the past projects, let's say from the past year or the past 5 to 10 projects. And look, were you profitable? How many hours if you're tracking your hours? Because that's the only way. And I know a lot of designers want to move to fixed fee, but they're scared for the same reasons, because you want to make sure that you can make a profit, because the last thing you want to do is you've charged the client $10,000. Meanwhile, you're putting in 3 times the hours that would get you to that. And you can't go back to the client. Then you start to resent the project, right? It's dragging on. We've all been there. It sucks. That happens even when you're charging hourly, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But it's something that when I moved to the fixed fee format, I wasn't that good at tracking hours, but what I did do is I looked back at previous projects and what I had billed to my client. Let's say a kitchen. This is like a perfect example, right? They're all varying in size, but more or less the same amount of work.
Yep.
And I looked at the kitchen and what I had billed hourly, because of course I wasn't billing all my hours, but anyhow. Yeah. And then what the fixed fee was. And it was like all of a sudden, immediately I was doubling my revenue.
Yeah.
And so for me, though I wasn't as good as you are at tracking, I didn't have all my hours recorded. And I didn't throw in a 10% to make up for the ones that I didn't charge. I could still see when I compared apples to apples that I was making more money. And the more you start to do the fixed fee, now you'll look back and say, okay, on that project, I charged that, and you can start charging more. And start charging a little bit more, right? As you get that experience.
Especially when like the last 4 I presented this to said yes, like it kind of tells you maybe I could push this a little harder. Another big reason for me to change to the flat fees, which was appealing to me, was, there was a couple things. Like this was my business coach got real with me. She was like, I was hiding behind like the way I used to do it like 2 months ago. I would basically go, okay, cool. We talk, this is the scope. And then I would, I kind of knew my hours, like how many hours per room on average, So I would say, okay, it's 3 rooms. It's generally per room, 30 to 40 hours to furnish a room. So I would basically go, okay, 30, 60, 90. Okay. Whatever. Let's just pretend. Let's pretend. I would basically say to a client, okay, so based on, it's probably going to be, let's say 70 to 100 hours for this project. And then I would say, so, it might be on the lower end. And I was hiding behind that. Like, that was like something that was making me feel more confident, because it could be on the lower side. Plus, those are not, you can't, it's just hours. It's like, until you turn that into a dollar figure, it's not as scary to say 70 or whatever. So then what I would do is I would say, okay, I'm going to invoice, you're going to be billed like 50% of like the estimated hours.
Oh, I remember you talking about this. This is how you used to do it, right?
Yeah. And it did work well. Like it did work well, but here's where it fell apart for me. Then, okay, so I would use up the time block. And then now I would have this mental barrier of like, I have to send an invoice. Now I have to give them an update on the hours. And then I have to like be really diligent. And then I have to say, okay, so this is how many hours we've used. And then I have to send a new invoice. And then I talk myself out of like some of the hours. I'd cut some of them out, make those like,
because then we also start feeling bad. We're like, well, we told them it was going to be 70 hours and like, they're going to wonder why, like, how do I not understand how much it takes? And then there's this, like, I don't want them to be mad at me. So I'm not going to send it. And there's like this mental, like, hoops that you walk through or jump through.
And now it's been a week since I should have sent it and I haven't sent it. So now it's weird if I do send it. And I'm like, oh my God. So it's like, okay,
it's disgusting.
20% is due before phase 2. Oh, we just went robotic. Are you back?
Yeah, we went really weird there for a second. I think we're back. Told me my internet connection was unstable.
Oh, no.
I don't know what causes that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've just hit the nail on the head. Like so many designers experience that. And what I think is the worst part of that is not even the money. It's the mental exhaustion that goes with the like lying in bed at night thinking about it. Oh my God, I can't even tell you, the time that I have freed up in my own brain, now that I charge a fixed fee, I can't even quantify that. Like it's tenfold.
It is tenfold so hard because it's like you have agreed to this series of payments. So when it comes to phase 2, I send that invoice to you. I'm free and clear. It's like you already knew this was happening. You've already agreed. It's fine. And also another big reason in working with my coach was talking about like when you know like how your phases work, you can now say and estimate like what the next few months looks like on a financial standpoint. So I can plug in those numbers because I know like my phase 1 is X number of weeks or months or whatever. And now I can like start to map out and I can go, okay, well, shoot, for February, I need to get a project locked into like, because February's not looking so good or whatever. And, so it's, honestly, for me, it's like, I keep saying revolution. All these little things have been really huge for me. In like, it really, to me, it's like the last 6 months have been about trying to let go of what I keep feeling like I'm being told is you're supposed to do. And saying like, okay, no. I need to do what works for my brain. Like, I've shared this on my podcast. I was diagnosed with ADHD last year last year. So like it explained a whole shit ton of things to me, which I did not know. And now I'm like, okay, my brain works a little different. So how do I basically like, it's like a manual for how to work. Like we all need to know how we work and what makes us thrive and what like makes things easier for us, because why would we make a business that's not easy? Like
totally,
just because somebody said it needs to be done a certain way. And also what we talked about before, it's like, plus I do it different, which makes it different. And I don't have the same process as everyone else. When they talk to me, they're seeing a different way of working that makes working with me unique.
And, I just interviewed a really great business coach who lives in the US, Andrea, and she was saying, you have to make your business something that suits you.
Yeah.
And then you are going to attract the client that wants that. And I think that as designers, we're not necessarily we don't have business training. And so a lot of us start out, we're artists, we have a really great eye, we can pull it together. We're good. Well, a lot of the time we're people, right? So we like to like chit chat and chat with people and create a relationship, but we don't have the business background. And so there's this tendency to just kind of latch on to what you see other people doing. Yeah. Even if now sometimes it's great for you and it works really well, but other times it's not for you. Yeah. And it's really hard to not sort of to try to not fit inside that mold that you see, and doing it a little bit differently. There's nothing wrong with it as long as it works for you. You make money, and a lot of it, like your experience, is trial and error.
Yeah.
And your process is still going to evolve, as is mine. Mine has
God, I know
evolved
that. Yeah.
tenfold in the last year. I've completely revamped how we do business because I've had that chance to reflect, see what's working for me, see what's not. And as our business model changes, as the type of client we work with changes, it's this thing that's going to continually ebb and flow. But I think that that's a great message, is that, you can tailor your process. You do need to have a process. I will preach about that.
Yeah, your process can't be, I don't have a process.
You can't not have a process.
I'm not going to say what you can or can't do, but.
No. You need a process. Every business book I've ever read talks about
process is, I don't have a process.
My process is, let's wing it. No, but really, I think that's a really great message to people who are looking for answers and they just want to latch onto something and just do it that way. Yeah. If you do that and you find that the process you're following is not gelling with you, you need to listen to yourself. Yeah. It sounds a little woo-woo, but it all starts here. It all starts here.
You got to find it within you. And back to the finding what works for you. One of the tests, have you heard of wealth dynamics?
No.
So this thing blew my mind. So wealth dynamics, it's wealthdynamics.com, I think. And I think you pay like $70 US or something, and you take this test. And basically the point of this test is to understand, everybody has different skill sets, right? So, which is a big reason why we can't all have the same looking processes or business models or the ways that we work. So what this does is it helps identify, are you I can't remember. For me, I'm a mechanic, which is creating processes, which I didn't expect that to be it, but I was like, that makes a lot of sense because I'm a little obsessed.
Can I just interject? That doesn't surprise me about you at all, because I feel like for the last year, you've talked so much about programs and software. I can relate to that because I've been like that and obsessing over no, I'm doing Ivy and it's the best. Now Asana and it's the best. And it's this constant striving for the thing that's going to help keep all the pieces and all the moving parts together. So that doesn't surprise me that you're
and it makes so much sense. So it was that and whatever. So you're either a star creative or a star or a mechanic or this or that. But the key with figuring out what are your dominant skills is that. And then it shows you other business owners or celebrities or whatever that fall into those categories. But it's about, figuring out what those skills are. And then they have a whole app on your phone where you can take additional learnings to figure out how to strengthen them or how to use those strengths to build a business that makes you profitable, as opposed to building a business that kind of focuses on a strength that is not kind of innate in you, right? It's kind of someone says something you wouldn't judge a fish by its ability to run.
Right.
So trying to build a business where you're running when you're a really good swimmer. Why would you do that? So build a business where you're swimming as opposed to running when you're not a good runner.
I love that. Parting words from Michelle Binette. You are not a fish.
Or maybe you are.
Maybe you're a fish. I don't know.
If you're a fish, swim.
I love it.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah.
As we wrap up this podcast, are there any kind of I always like to end with a great nugget of wisdom from my guests. No pressure for my listeners. Do you have any last I don't know, nuggets to share?
Okay, well, I'll share a nugget that you may have heard me say before because I say it a lot. This was a quote that I heard a while ago that I cut and paste. It's kind of long, but I'm going to try to give you I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's Ira Glass. And it talks about, he basically says I'm going to, again, paraphrasing. He says something I wish somebody had told me this, but as creatives, what gets us in the game is our taste. And we have really great taste. But what happens early in our careers is that the work that we produce always lets us down. And this is where I resonate. Pretty much, I'm always disappointed by my work. And so he basically talks about everybody starts there and your taste got you in the game. But what you have to do is keep doing the work over and over again so that basically your work can get up to speed with like where your tastes and what your expectations are. So like for me, that was just really like, it was a really compelling thing for me because of the way I'm a perfectionist and I'm always comparing and I'm working on it. But, you know, this is like, if you find your favorite designer who you admire or people that you compare yourself to that you're feeling envious of, I like to play a little game where I scroll down to the very first Instagram post, or if you're able to hack, like I used to do this with Amber Interiors, like when her website was like before, you could figure out how to go into our older archives by like hacking like the URL, like based on the month. So I'd go look at like her like 10 years ago stuff versus now. And you're like, well, shit, like there was an evolution there, even though she's so amazing now. Same with Studio McGee, for example. Like if you go down to the beginning, it's just, it's context, right? So it's just remembering that
it's a good reminder. Everybody starts somewhere, you know, you're not the star right out of the gate.
No. So you just got to do the work.
You got to do the work.
Keep doing the work. Yeah.
Doing the work. Thank you so much, Michelle. This has been so fun to have you on.
I have loved chatting with you. I liked being on the other side. It was fun.
Well, we'll have you back and then we'll hear how your process is evolving. I love that.
Yeah. Because I'm sure at some point in time, I'm going to realize my flat fees are too low.
Yeah.
But I just decided my first year in business, I completely charged too little and I made it through just fine. So we're just going to rip the Band-Aid off, see what happens and not worry. If it's wrong, I can change it.
Totally. Yeah. That's the right attitude. Okay, before we go, can you let everybody know where they can find you?
Absolutely. So you can find me at michellebinette.design on Instagram, or if you want to follow the podcast, you can go to at Real Talk Design Podcast. Right?
Do you remember the name of your podcast?
I think so. And then you can go to michellebinette.com. And if you aren't listening to Real Talk Design, you can listen to the podcast on any place that you listen to podcasts.
Like where you're listening to this one.
That's right. Go search.
And feel free to subscribe to both. Don't forget to subscribe so you get notified. Tell a friend.
Right.
Take a screenshot.
Review. 5 stars, preferably.
Oh my God. Yeah. Thank you very much. Well. All I can say is that, shoot, I seriously wish I had that mindset when I was only a few years into my business the way that Michelle does. I feel like it's taken me a decade to learn what she has only learned in a handful of years. So kudos to you, Michelle. And thank you for sharing. I think this is an interesting episode because so many people are worried about what others are going to think about them or worried about fitting into this mold that the design industry has created for designers. And her episode just goes to show that that's not the case. The world is also a changing place. And I think that, I say think a lot. I just realized that. Anyhow, self-reflection. These podcasts may cause me pause for reflection. So if you're a designer and you're struggling with your process and you're not a member of my Power of Process class, well, obviously you should be. But you might want to look at the areas in your business that are causing you friction. You know, I really enjoy that Michelle reflected on the fact that she was feeling friction or discomfort after these consultations because it wasn't always the right fit. And so she recognized in herself what needed to change. And I think that is the best place to be as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, that you can learn from your lessons. I am still learning. I feel as though I inherited a way of doing things from my years working in the industry that maybe don't serve me as well. So I'm even going to take some time now, I think, to reflect on how can I improve some parts of our process to fit who I am. Anyways, those are my deep thoughts. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I will see you soon.